Welcome to today's Photo Minute. My name is Brian Osborne of the Photo Classroom, and it's great to be back with you today. We've had a couple exciting days of teaching about photographing the moon and then seeing everybody's results from the supermoon last evening. I hope you enjoyed that experience. It was really neat that we were able to do that as a community and yet not necessarily be with each other. But to be about the same purpose and the same goal of capturing the moon. And please continue to share your images if you haven't already at our Facebook page. We'd love to just see as many of the moon images as we can of different creativity actually that people had in capturing the supermoon yesterday evening. Today I want to talk about macro photography, because macro photography, close-up photography, is just a great thing for us to be doing, especially during this time where we don't feel like we can have all the travel options and have as many photographic opportunities around us. There is always things that we can photograph in the macro world, and they're just waiting all around us, both inside our homes as well as outside as well. And today I just wanted to talk about the different ways, the different pieces of equipment that you might choose to use in order to get close to small subjects. I often define a close-up subject or macro photography as being a subject that's really 1 to 2 inches wide. And I want to be able to, with my camera, to frame up that entire subject matter and fill that entire viewfinder with that one small subject matter. And so there's a couple options to do that, and what's really key here is that you know the minimum focusing distance, or how close your lens can focus the lens that you plan to use for macro images. Some of you may be seeing a picture that I'm going to post later today of a caterpillar, and I was actually using my macro lens for that image, and while it really magnified the caterpillar, I actually missed some shots because I got too physically close with the lens to the actual caterpillar. And if you get too close beyond the minimum focusing distance, the lens can't focus. If the lens can't focus, you're not going to get a good picture. So the goal of today's challenge or assignment is that you are very clear about what is the minimum focusing distance of all of your lenses ideally, but certainly the lenses that you plan to use for close-up type photography. A standard lens like an 18 to 55 or a 24 to 70 probably can only focus down to 1 to 2 feet. That sounds pretty close, but it's very hard to fill the frame up with a small subject matter if you are using a lens that has a minimum focusing distance that's 1 to 2 feet away. Okay, a couple other options out there. Many of you may have already invested in a all-in-one lens. We often suggest the Sigma 18 to 300 millimeter lens. It's a great all-purpose lens for all kinds of different types of subject matter. But what's kind of neat about it is that it also has a macro focusing ability, and when you zoom it into 300 millimeters, it actually gets fairly close to your subject matter. So I took my 18 to 300, I zoomed it into 300 millimeters, and you'll see that I can actually get a clear, sharp image of this flower at what is about 12 inches away. So this might be all the macro lens you need. It's just in an all-in-one lens that you may have already considered or already own. If you want something to take your existing lenses and to allow them to focus closer than they otherwise can, we have a couple quick suggestions for you. One is a close-up filter set. Usually you can buy a set of close-up filters for about $40. They come in varying powers. The higher the power you put on the front of the lens, you can even combine up to 2 filters at the same time, the closer that lens is now going to be able to focus. And so as long as you bought the right size filters for the right size lens diameter that you're planning to use them on, it's a great inexpensive way to start out in macro photography. Another fairly inexpensive way is a set of extension tubes. These are basically lenses without a piece of glass inside of them, and what happens is you take one of these, place it in between the camera and the lens, and it allows the lens to focus much closer than it otherwise could. And so you can get a set of extension tubes for under about $100, and that way you can take any lens that's in your bag and turn it into a different type or a different focal length of macro or close-up lens. The third option is obviously to go buy a close-up lens. You can imagine that these range between $200 and $1,000, and there's a whole variety of different focal lengths and different pros and cons of some of the lenses that are out there. If I were just going to make a general suggestion for a close-up lens, I'd probably go with something in the 90 or 100 millimeter, 105 millimeter range. That's going to allow you to get very close to subject matters, but still give you enough of what we call the working distance so that you don't have the lens totally on top of the subject matter in order to magnify it. Macro lenses are very good quality, but obviously you're spending some extra money, then you might just try extension tubes or some of the other items that we've mentioned. The lens that I bought last year as a macro lens that I really have enjoyed is a 150 millimeter, a little bit more powerful Sigma macro lens. But you know, depending on which camera you have, it's almost too much power. It can be very hard to hold steady if you're not using a tripod, and sometimes it actually puts me a little bit further away from the subject than I'd ideally like to be. All of the macro lenses are going to allow you to get very, very tight. I'll show some pictures with this post of how I was able to get inside of just one of these flowers in the sample pictures. But ultimately, you got to find the right macro lens for you if you decide to go that route. Otherwise, I'd probably be pretty prone to either use my all-in-one lens like an 18-300 or to use extension tubes as a great economical way to get into trying some close-up pictures. We're going to be back with some other tips and elements around doing close-up images having to do with depth of field and focusing struggles, etc. We'll do that in some sessions coming up over the next days and weeks. But I just wanted to give you a little primer in terms of some equipment that might allow you to start exploring this area if you haven't already. The assignment, hopefully for all of us, is regardless of whether you were already familiar with some of this information, certainly it's a very good idea to maybe take some test pictures this afternoon and see what the minimum focusing distance is on the lenses that you plan to use, that you may possibly use for any type of close-up or macro photography. My name is Brian Osborne. It's been great to be with you again. Thank you again for joining us at today's Photo Minute.